is Google's removal or omission of information from its services or those of its subsidiary companies such as YouTube in order to comply with its company's policies, legal demands, or various government censorship laws. Google censorship varies between countries and their regulations and ranges from advertisement to speeches. Over the years, the search engine censorship policies and targets have also differed and have been the source of internet censorship debates. Numerous governments have asked Google to censor what they publish. In 2012, Google ruled in favor of more than half of the requests that are received via court orders and phone calls. This did not include China and other places who block their site entirely. That is, Google and YouTube are completely blocked in some countries. I will go over the specifics in China because it is a ebb and flow policy that they have decided and changed their decision over and over, right? So just to give you a heads up of what this article is talking about, they are saying that Google has agreed to certain censorship, and they do not reveal such censorship, nor do they reveal these policies on any sort of information or any sort of guides as to their policies and companies. So we're specifically talking about the United States, and what do they censor in the United States on their website. Now, of course, you all can say, well, Google is a private company, and that is true. So there is no need, or there is no right that they are impinging upon because they are a private company. Your neighbor can, in fact, tell you to be quiet. Your neighbor can, in fact, tell you to get off of their property. Your neighbor, so in this instance, Google is acting as your neighbor, right? So your neighbor can tell you a whole host of things that if your neighbor were the federal government could not do. But because they're a private company, they can do this. So you do not have a right to Google. You do not have a right to YouTube, right? That's the going theory. Why is there a debate? There is a debate because Google, through its practices, has become the monopoly of the internet. Google is the #1 website in the entire internet in the world. YouTube is the #2 website in the entire world. So if you understand, then YouTube loads up millions of hours of actual video content on its platform per day. I want to say day. I know there's some sort of numbers for hour per hour, but I don't have that number. But I know that it's millions per day, at least millions per day. Now, because of this, this is why the people are talking about Google, who of course then has robots then crawl your website. If you make a website, if you can imagine, YouTube is limited to videos. Now, I want you to then expand that entire concept of millions of hours of content per day for YouTube, which is limited to videos. I want you to now expand that for Google itself, because people upload or bring online millions probably trillions or even maybe quadrillions of websites. And you think I'm exaggerating? When I was in complete white hat mode online marketing. The people in Asia, let's say they have discovered that they could make 2 cents on AdSense on creating a website, right? They would then go and make 100 websites. So that 2 cents, of course, then turned into 200 cents per, what is it, an hour. And then they would expand that to thousands. And of course, then Google would talk about, well, that's, you are creating garbage sites, and they had all sorts of policies that said that you can't create garbage sites, and it would be a site that had one page on it and one page only, and all they were interested in was the person going to the website, seeing the advertisement, and making the money and the quick money. I said 2 cents, right? I didn't say $200. I said 2 cents. They figured out a way to make 2 cents, so they would make 100 websites. Same thing, 100 websites. Then they would the networks. They made 1,000 websites. So you can imagine these individual guys making thousands of websites themselves. So when I say it could possibly be trillions a day, it could possibly be trillions a day. The volume that they played with was no joke. I would create one fantastic website, which I did create one fantastic website, and then, you know, I started making $100, you know, every few days or something like that. And I got it to number 1, and they didn't do that. They got 2 cents. They were happy with the 2 cents, and they expanded it exponentially to make garbage websites that were 1 page long. Now, so you can imagine Google probably has trillions, if not quadrillions, of websites that come online each and every day worldwide. So then they have to determine if they're going to let those go through, and they put that into their algorithm, the actual Google algorithm, with the actual Google robots, which you can program for in your website, which you have far more control than you do on YouTube. YouTube has all of these policies and so forth and so on. What is happening in America as far as censorship with Google and YouTube? In the United States, on YouTube and Google, they have not just government thing, because they can get away with it, because it's a private company. They have actual, not just government agencies that you've never heard of, that you wouldn't even believe exist, that cover topics that you have never voted on, that you would never agree to give powers over such topics, such markets, if you knew they existed, are contracting with Google to censor anything covering that. Now, I'm not talking about some black hat, men in black, or anything like that, any sort of conspiracy. I'm talking about true blue policy sort of agencies that exist that you just never heard of, you would never even think of. You know, so for instance, I'm looking at a towel. There's probably an agency that covered towels in the United States and putting tags on towels, and they contract with Google or YouTube to not show any videos covering tags on towels or tags on pillowcases and stuff like that. Huh? Nothing conspiratorial, well within their powers. It's just that you don't know such an agency exists. Let's step down from there. Not any less powerful, actual groups that have formed around certain topics and certain subjects that they feel really strongly about, who have contacted Google, and who have either just called Google or actually sued Google over to say, we want you to censor this, and Google has agreed to it. What's the real problem here? The real problem here is when we go back up to one step, right? When you say that Google then agrees with the federal government or state governments, and I'm going to get to Google in California in another video, then we're talking about Google receiving money from the federal government. Does that turn Google into a quasi-federal government agency? And that's where everything gets sticky. Because then you say, hey, wait a minute, you are receiving payment from the federal government. That makes you an agent of the government, because that's the whole definition of an agent of the government, is that you are on the payroll of the federal government, which is the same exact debate over the NFL. So if we're talking about the NFL, then we start looking into their books, into their accounting sheets, and see that they are paid very heavily under the Department of Homeland Security, from the military branches of the government, and that they receive an actual stipend, and they receive subsidies from the actual federal government. Hold on, NFL, you're no longer a private company. You are somewhat representing the federal government in this limited aspect. You're not just football. Now you have you're on the payroll of the federal government, which makes you then you have to abide by the Constitution because you're an agent of the federal government. Same thing with Twitter. This is why those debates were held at Congress, and testimony was taken at Congress by all of the tech industry giants, who then come to find out everything that they had said has been debunked. So then maybe perhaps there should be a review of that testimony and who said what and what to do about it when that information is actually debunked, when somebody comes out and reveals, haha, what they told you was not exactly true. And when I say not exactly true, I mean not true at all. The exact opposite is the case. Now, so Google is on the payroll of the federal government. So then when you start getting into censorship, then you have to say, hold on. You're no longer a private company. You're on the payroll of, it's different for a Wall Street bank who takes a loan from a quasi-governmental agency, and they have to pay that loan back. That's just doing a business deal. Or a Wall Street bank who suggests, actually writes up the regulation and gives it to a federal regulator and say, we recommend these regulations to regulate us. That's different. They're not on the payroll. They're not a subsidiary of the federal government. That's different. It's completely different if you're on the payroll, if you take actual money from the federal government, if you are under, same thing with farmers. And when I say farmers, I mean big, huge, giant corporations who take millions of dollars and subsidize money from the federal government and then claim that they're a private company. No, you're not a private company. You are a subsidiary of the federal government. And at any time, regulators can come onto your property and tell you who, what, when, and where, and how long, versus the actual real private farmers who, the bank runs out of business. If you are taking a paycheck from the federal government, you are no longer a private company. All right? You are, in fact, an agent of the federal government. You are then held strictly to the Constitution then. So the idea that Google is censoring people and claiming to be a private company does not hold water, and any good lawyer that anybody brought a lawsuit against, any good lawyer would argue that you're an agent of the federal government and you are acting under those auspices directly under the direction, instruction, and policies of the federal government, and then you are thereby held under the Constitution and limited under the Constitution. Tell me what you think below. Thank you all for watching. The fact of the matter is they're censoring. It's true. So I just read you an actual article, number one article. Thank you all for watching.